So it's the Christmas season back in 1996. The national average of a house in 1996 is $118,000. Rent is just under $600. Dolly the sheep has become the first cloned mammal. The Macarena tops the Billboard's Hot 100 list, and Mariah Carey's and Boyz II Men's One Sweet Day comes right behind it. That song gets me every time. Nintendo releases its first 3D gaming console, the Nintendo 64. And did you know Wes Craven's postmodern horror masterpiece, Scream, came out on Christmas Day of 1996, which feels... I don't know. It was smart because it obviously gained an audience, but it feels a little wild. That's when they chose to do that, considering, within the first 10 minutes of the movie, Drew Barrymore, an American sweetheart at that time, is basically shown slaughtered on screen. But then also that same week, Bongo Java becomes famous for the first of a few hot minutes related to a bun that bore a striking resemblance to Mother Teresa. This is Nashville Demystified. I am your host, Alex Steed. Nashville Demystified is typically a show in which I get to know this city better by talking with the folks who live, work, agitate, and make art here. After spending every waking minute at Americanafest last week, I am taking a breather. And so this is a mere quickie, although it didn't end up being quick, about Bongo Java's NunBun. And, while it's relatively quick, the story has it all, really. It has a possible sign from God. It has an unexpected explosion of fame, actually several unexpected explosions of fame, threats of legal action, a heist, a kidnapping, and more. Also, a quick bonus fact. In researching this episode, or doing research for this episode, I found out that there is a pastry with Acadian roots that you can find in Montreal called the Pet de Soeur, which translates to nun's fart. Has nothing to do with today's tale, but I thought it would be a shame if I did not share what I found while trying to understand the NunBun better. The Pet de Soeur. My French accent is horrendous, but that means nun's fart, in case you needed to have that information. Maybe it'll benefit you one day on a game show. Do you know, actually, that I used to be a person of little means who lived in New York City, big New York. I lived in Brooklyn. I lived in Clinton Hill specifically. I got into a cab once, and that cab was on Cash Cab. And I got up to potentially winning $1,000, which would have come in handy as an unpaid intern living in New York, working at night, at a cafe. It would have been great to win $1,000, but I was bad at the kinds of trivia that were being thrown at me, so I lost on Cash Cab. Anyway, hopefully knowing about the nun's fart will help you in a similar situation at some point in your future. Nashville Demystified is made possible thanks so much to support from Knack Factory, a commercial video production house here in the city, and We Own This Town, a collective of podcasts produced by Nashvillians. Every week I try to tell you about a We Own This Town show, but you should listen to the show, the flagship show, We Own This Town, which introduces you to a number of amazing Nashville musicians. Every week it is fabulous. It is run by my friend Michael Eads. I just love it. Speaking of Nashville musicians, I was at Americanafest, as I said at the beginning of this episode. I can't say enough about how wonderful of a time that was. It's a festival and showcase that happens here in the city. It happens for a week. It's got a conference element. It's got the element of shows. Too many great things to count, but I saw Anthony Costa through a show called FOMO, and it just had a number of his friends and collaborators there that really blew my mind. There I was taken by Caitlin Rose, who's just a phenomenal singer herself, songwriter. Saw Ruth Moody, wonderful person and singer, and then saw among so many great things, in performances and musicians. Aaron Ray's Carpenters related or Carpenters inspired show that was thrown into 5-spot and just featured, fabulous musician after fabulous musician. Lilly Hiatt, Nicole Atkins, Kaylin Rose again, just person after person after person blowing your mind, playing songs that were inspired by, the vibe of the Carpenters. Essentially a covers night. Everyone was in full time and themed regalia. Things were just a delight. The place was packed. I typically don't do well in settings where I'm so close to people for hours on end, but it was well worth it. And kudos to Aaron for putting that on. It was just amazing. So Americanafest all around, a wonderful time. I feel badly knowing I'm omitting talking about a number of great musicians who I saw as well. But how about this? Go to the website. I will list some of the greatness that I saw, and hopefully that will serve as an acknowledgement for who I'm forgetting right now. But it wasn't for a lack of quality showings and performance the whole way through. Okay, one more thing before we start. Follow us, like us, subscribe to us, do all the things. Honestly, it really does help support what we're doing. Please tell your friends, share episodes, do all that. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on The Proof that God has a dark sense of humor, that is Facebook. Normally when we do these tags, we try to find a way to shit on Facebook effectively, and I think that's the one for the week. A while back, I asked the Nashville Reddit community what stories about Nashville history deserve extra attention, particularly for people like me who are relatively new to the city. And Redditor Molly McDeath, who was more or less wholly responsible for facilitating our episodes about Ernest, Molly suggested I spend time with the NunBun of Bongo Java. I love that we've hopped from Third Man Records to the death penalty to a bun that, bore a striking resemblance to Mother Teresa. This podcast and its subject matter very closely resembles how my brain and attention span works. So before the internet, seeing religious iconography and things was a super big deal. It happened a lot. I mean, it happens still. And you catch stories about this here and there, but I seem to remember this happening a lot. In the NunBun played into that. And I realized that I was familiar with this bun without realizing it was a part of Nashville lore. So I can't be sure, there are a number of smarter people in the world who can confirm this, I bet, but it seems like this was even a bigger deal before the introduction of the smartphone, because I imagine, I don't know, instead of whatever the hell it is we do on our phones all day, people would just sit around and look at things. And think and be bored. And that was good for a lot of things. That was good for creativity. That was good for noticing what was around you. And, you had to wait in line. You just stood there. You looked ahead of you. You might even talk to the people around you, whatever. You might read a page from your Douglas Copeland book. You might have just done nothing, but just looked with your eyes. And that's exactly what was happening when a customer at Bongo Java noticed that one of the buns on display looked like Mother Teresa. At least I imagine that's what happened. We know that a customer spotted this bun. We don't know the exact circumstance as far as all my poking around, what my poking around is revealed, but we know that someone, saw something in a bun. And I think it was like on display and they probably noticed it, because I have a feeling that if they took it back to their table and they noticed it, they would be famous for the NunBun, not Bongo Java. I don't know. It's hard to say. A couple more pieces of context. For those who those who were not fully conscious in the 1990s, Mother Teresa was a nun and a missionary known in the Catholic Church as Saint Teresa of Calcutta. She devoted her life to caring for the sick and poor, and she was used by many as a binary for being an exceptionally good person. Like a good person was a real Mother Teresa. I don't know what that says about us, but we used to say that. So a Catholic nun, I mean, she ran a number of like hundreds of houses, specifically for the poor. I think that were located in, I think, over 100 countries throughout the world. Pretty substantial footprint. So a Catholic nun and missionary, she had views about contraception and abortion that were not progressive, and could be argued that played into feeding the poverty that she was fighting. And her approaches to anti-poverty work generally were problematic. She was criticized for as much by people throughout her career and after the fact, most notably by Christopher Hitchens. But she was routinely recognized globally as one of the most admired people on the planet throughout the later half of the 20th century. Keep in mind, like for a long time, again, before the internet entered our lives as intensely as it did, we were just like not kind of non-critical about everything. Like before September 11th and before the internet. And I'm not saying that we've made the greatest strides because of some of the circumstances we're in now, but basically, like if someone was like known, that's all that really mattered. There weren't deep dives. There weren't hot takes. that dismantled some mythologies. So Mother Teresa was almost like unquestionably the best as far as everyone was concerned. And for any outsiders listening in, a little background on Bongo Java. Bongo Java it now has a bunch of locations and properties and is different brands. But it's Nashville's oldest coffee house. It opened in 1993, 3 years before all this went down. And it opened in a cafe coffee house frenzy that occurred in the early to mid 90s. You obviously recall that Friends took place at Central Park, a coffee shop where people were just like hanging around and doing things. So I Married an Axe Murderer was a hilarious Mike Myers comedy that centered around the 90s cafe culture. Singles. There were just cafes were a place that you would go and not have a job, and you'd have minimal employment, and you just like hang out and maybe see some people play music. You weren't paying a ton of money to live where you were living, so you could, there was more leisure time, and people just hung out at cafes, and Bongo Java was one of these places that came out of that movement. According to their website, the company grew through a series of accidents, unexpected opportunities, and operational needs. I imagine the NunBun saga overlaps a few of these categories. Like I said earlier, seeing religious symbols in everyday things has happened a bunch before. Popes have shown up on toast. Mary has shown up in grilled cheese sandwiches. Jesus's face has shown up on pans of bacon and on fish sticks. According to an NPR story by Juan Vidal, this phenomenon is called pareidolia. And in this story that ran on NPR about this, Kang Lee, a developmental psychologist at the University of Toronto, explained, it turns out that face pareidolia affects the parts of our brain that are responsive to real faces. So in other words, if you experience such a phenomenon, nothing is wrong with your brain. Thank you, Kang Lee, for letting us know that nothing is wrong with us for seeing Mother Teresa in a bun. More from that article. Brain scans show that when we see a face, this part of the brain is called the fusiform face, and it lights up. So when we see a face, this part of the brain just lights right up. And we can also see it light up when we see things that kind of look like faces too. So basically, if we see something where we recognize a face, our brain says, that's a face. Hey, buddy, that is a face. Listen up. Listen to me. Your brain. This is the fusiform face segment talking. That is absolutely a face. Anyway, shit got real pretty fast at Bongo. And this is an interesting element of the story. It is basically a picture of early viral fame, but it has a foot in how virality used to work before the internet, and then how it worked when the internet was finally a thing. A story ran in the Tennessean, and from there it got picked up in USA Today. There were nods to the phenomenon on Letterman, on The Nanny, and Mad About You. And very quickly, this became a deal that people throughout the country knew about. There's a bun in Nashville, Tennessee. It has the likeness of Mother Teresa on it. So people began to come to the shop to see the bun. It was a big, big deal. And it's worth noting that this is where it sort of becomes, a viral sensation that we know that is more typical to the internet. Because according to the Bongo website, someone came into the shop and they said, hey, you should have a website about this. This is like a big deal. And so that person, I think, built a site that was basically just, the Bongo website, and it was just a picture of the bun and maybe a couple words around it. And it got 1 million views, which or 1 million visits is what we would have said back then. But this is a huge deal because a website in the mid 90s getting 1 million views for any reason was nuts. And before things went viral, every day, thousands of times a day, it was a real substantial phenomenon when that would happen. So this happened. Bongo has a website. It's just a picture of Mother Teresa. Over 1 million people are going to check it out. And they are awarded Best Local Website by the Nashville scene, which is quite an honor in the mid 90s to get recognized for that sort of thing. So Bongo, they shellacked the bun to preserve it, and they began selling merchandise, including t-shirts, prayer cards, and special roasts. Bongo was, up to that point, calling the bun the Mother Teresa Miracle NunBun. And so, some time goes by, and then Bongo receives a letter from Mother Teresa's attorney. Mother Teresa wouldn't even, just for some background, Mother Teresa wouldn't even let her name be used on Bibles to raise money for the poor, so she wasn't stoked on Bongo using her name to sell t-shirts and merchandise. In 1997, the Spokesman, ran an article with perhaps the clunkiest headline I've ever read. For real, it is the following. Mother Teresa isn't sweet on the NunBun. She asks coffee house to stop merchandising her likeness that a customer saw in pastry. Oh, cool. That is a hell of a headline. It quotes a letter that Mother Teresa sent to Bongo owner Bob Bernstein, in which she says,
"My legal counsel has written asking you to stop, and now I am personally asking you to stop. I do know that you have not done anything out of ill will, and so trust that you will understand and respect my wish. God bless you."
From Mother Teresa, signed by Mother Teresa. In the same article, Bernstein said, "I've made so little money on this that there's no point in antagonizing anybody," which, is him basically saying that they're not going to pursue this further than they have to. So this is when the shop pivoted to exclusively using the term NunBun. According to her attorney, Mother Teresa had a good sense of humor about all of this. He said, "She runs an order of 570 houses in 100 countries, administering to the poorest of the poor. In the grand scheme of things, this hasn't had a lot of her attention." The Bongo website says Mother Teresa actually enjoyed the NunBun. As reported by her attorney, she joked about it weeks before she died. The attorney, the eventual saint, and her replacement were discussing issues that needed to be solved before Mother Teresa died. The outline of our NunBun settlement came up. She looked at her replacement and said, "Tell those people in Tennessee to find a bun that looks like her." On a retrospective post about the whole thing, Bongo employee Jackson O'Brien delivered a variation of the anecdote. He said, "We like to think that she actually was tickled by the bun itself, as, when she was passing on her duties to her successor in Calcutta, her successor expressed worry that she wouldn't be as universally loved as Mother Teresa, to which Mother Teresa responded, 'Don't worry about it, just have them bake something that looks like you, they'll love you.' And so that was that." But then there's more. There's more to the story somehow. About a decade after the NunBun was discovered, somebody took the hinges off the front door of Bongo Java at night. They broke in and they kidnapped the NunBun. All this happened, by the way, on Christmas Eve. The thief took nothing but the bun. Despite its notoriety, the police put its value at $25 in the police report, which I find to be hilarious. My favorite bit from all of this came from Bob Bernstein discussing the theft/kidnapping on Keith Olbermann's show. Again, this is back in the mid-2000s. Keith Olbermann's a very big deal then. Olbermann asks, did you ever think it was divinely lifted into the heavens? To which Bernstein responds, well, if it did, then there likely would have been a hole in our roof instead of a front door off its hinges. Which is just fantastic. The police closed the case in 2006. So it's done, right? It's done. No, it's not done. In 2007, the Tennessean received a letter postmarked from Seattle that says, she's in good hands. Accompanying it was a photograph of a young bearded man resembling Jesus lying on a sunny beach, holding the NunBun in his outstretched hand. It's the third letter and photograph the newspaper has received from, quote, whodunit, Hudunet. The third letter. I haven't seen this letter or photograph. I want to see it. I don't know if it's being kept secret, but let's see it, the Tennessean. And that, my friends, is the saga of the NunBun to this point. I'm sure it's not over. How could it be over? I mean, this is a story for the ages. It will keep going, I'm sure. Thanks, by the way, to Erin Ray, who I mentioned at the top of this episode. She brought to my attention the fact that Kate Campbell, a Nashville songwriter and a former Bongo Java regular, I'm not sure if she's still a regular there, but she performs a song inspired by the incident called Jesus and Tomatoes Coming Soon. And it's written by Campbell herself, along with Ira Campbell and Johnny Pierce. And it's clever as all get out. Let's listen to a piece from the song.
In my tomato bed, a holy image, blood red, smile, God loves you. I see him on the vine, this just might be a sign of help me. Jesus and tomatoes are coming soon. Folks came from miles around. They laid their money down to see that ripe phenomenon. Even made the evening news and had a website to this vegetable from heaven. Or is it a fruit? What rose up from the dirt now sells on t-shirts. Smile, God loves you. I see him.
Oh, I should tell you though, the $5,000 no questions asked reward for the return of the NunBun still exists. So if you are out there, you know where the NunBun is, get it. Get that bun and get it home. The bun wants to be home, apparently. And you can have $5,000, no questions asked. I mean, it sounds like a trap, but it probably is not. That's all for this episode of Nashville Demystified. Thank you so much to Jesse LaFontaine for all things audio post-production. You are a saint, Jesse. I mean, you're no Mother Teresa bun, but you're still great. Thank you all. We'll talk soon.
The profits kept rolling in. I prayed they'd never end and filed for tax exemption. I heard a knocking at my door. Was a lawyer for the Lord saying, don't do this no more. I said, come and dine with me. We'll have a BLT. Smile, God loves you. I see him on the vine. This just might be a sign of help me.
What's up, pals? It's me, Mother Teresa. Just kidding. Just joshing around, you know? Okay.